Cool. All right. Thank you all for being so punctual. This doesn't always happen. But if you haven't signed in, please do so. Please grab as many snacks as you would like. If that is empty by the time that we're done, I'm not upset by it. But my name is Jesse Wieland. I'm the Associate Director of the Office of National Fellowships, and I talk really loud. So if you actually don't mind closing that door, that would be, I think it's unlocked, so people should still be able to walk in. So obviously we're going to be talking today about summer opportunities specifically for STEM students, primarily those centered around research opportunities. And so brief show of hands, you're involved in research currently. Okay, excellent. The good news is with a lot of these opportunities, research background or research experience is not always required. In fact, many of these scholarships, they want to be that point of access for you. And so by no means do you need to wait until these applications come around, which is going to be mid to late fall and early spring. I would strongly encourage you to find those opportunities here at Florida State now. And I'd be happy to, in a one-on-one meeting, kind of talk to you a little bit more about that process. Because quite literally, it could be as simple as just researching faculty in your department and sending a quick email, going to their office hours and sitting down, expressing why you're interested in their work. And I've had many students over the years that have just found that as their entry point. You know, may not always be the lab they want to do for their entire career at Florida State, but it gets you that experience. It starts building those professional connections, and it can lead to something really positive. Conversely, I've had plenty of students that have pursued many of the opportunities that we're going to talk about as first years, as second years, and that can be a launching point for their academic involvement at Florida State and building their network beyond Florida State. Why pursue these opportunities? A little bit about my background. My background is not in STEM, so I was kind of joking with the people here early is I'll tell my students that I'm a really good litmus test for your research essays. I do not understand neuroscience. I have had plenty of students that have submitted very competitive applications that have been nominated for like Goldwater and some other scholarships where I'm like, I mean, this is jargon to me, but if your PI, if your faculty says that it's good to go, then it's good to go. And now these applications, they're not just looking for your academic prowess. They want to know, okay, so we can assume many of the people applying to these opportunities are academically qualified, but why should it be you? Why should we support you in coming here? And so you do need to explore those personal narratives that are going to be really relevant when you're applying to med school, graduate school, or other professional programs. And so these opportunities are going to really allow you to expand your academic network, building relationships at other institutions with other faculty who may down the line be able to write these letters of recommendation that you need, who can speak to you as a researcher, as an academic, as a professional. But it allows you to get outside of the classroom. So coming into college myself, as a first-gen student, I was like, yeah, I go to class, I pay for college, I do well in my classes, you know, I graduate, like, that's the goal. That is certainly part of the goal. But if you do that for 4 years or four and a half years, in my case, that's not because I was like a real go-getter. It's because I was like, I can squeeze another football season out of my college degree. So this is going to be more of a do as I say, not as I did conversation. But I also didn't know these opportunities existed. And this is a really excellent way to branch out and really confirm that, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do in graduate school, maybe what I want to do long term. The other side of that is it could challenge some of the goals and interests that you have, and that is absolutely okay. You know, maybe if I had gotten involved in research, you know, in my first couple of years, I would have realized, yeah, this ain't it for me. And that's okay. But the point is, you know, by getting involved in these extracurricular opportunities, getting involved in these labs, the hope is, I think all of you are in this room or joining us virtually because you have some genuine interest in STEM and in the research or in your field. Now it's just kind of whittling it down to not just say like, yeah, I want a career in physics. You know, it's like, okay, well, what discipline, what field, like where, you know, what graduate degree programs, like these are the opportunities that are going to help get you there. And then the very basic reason is all of these opportunities are fully funded. And so this can send you abroad, this can send you to other universities. You know, some of these opportunities are purely undergraduate scholarships. where they just want you to be able to prioritize your time in the lab and research, so that those scholarships can go towards books, tuition, and fees, but they want to help ensure that you're not having to work off campus in order to afford college. And so they want to make research more accessible. Okay, so how many of you have heard of the National Science Foundation REUs, the research experience for undergraduates? Okay, awesome. It tends to be, in different fellowships and different disciplines, there are those more recognizable names, and this is typically the entry point for many students. And so what an NSF REU is, it's a fully funded summer research opportunity at typically a university outside of your home institution. Florida State has plenty of REUs that they fund, and plenty of students, for many reasons, opt to stay here over the summer. But if your specific discipline is not offered as an REU at Florida State, that is an excellent reason to branch out. Here we go. So typically 6 to 10 weeks in length. And this is I can't speak entirely in blanket terms with the REUs because it's kind of like the good news, bad news. The good news is there are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of REU opportunities across the US. The bad news is there are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of different processes for this is how you apply, this is the stipend that you get. But typically, they're going to cover your housing, your meals, travel to and from the site. Every REU is going to be built a little bit different. And so, again, the good news of this is that we are still at the very front end of this process. These aren't even going to really open until the end of the fall semester. And then usually they're due between January and March, so early spring. You can also apply to, unlike other fellowships where you submit one application for one opportunity and we cross our fingers and hope that you get it, REUs, it's kind of like going to the gas station and buying a bunch of scratch offs, you can keep playing, you can keep applying to as many as you would like, you can only accept one. But that's where doing your research early and finding the labs that best align with your interests can be really helpful, because find the one that's due the soonest, work on that application, and then we can adapt and modify that application to these different REUs, so we can kind of work smarter and not harder. And some of these will ask you for multiple 500-word essays. Sometimes it'll be one 2-page essay or personal statement of interest, statement of goals. They use different jargon, but they're all meaning the same thing. Now, this, like I said, all across the United States, and I even believe there are a few REUs that are international. But when you go to their website, and literally Google NSF REU, it's going to be the first link that comes up. This is what you're going to see. So these are all the different fields that they support. You'll click on some of these and they might have 200 plus REU sites, or you might click on some, which I just clicked on this because I thought it sounded cool. But I was like, polar programs. I was like, hell yes, I mean Antarctica, but the closest you're going to get is Alaska. But that's still pretty cool. Or you can go to Boulder and tell Dion to stop talking shit about Florida State, But anyways, best of luck to them. But anyways, so when you click on these different sites, it's a lot of information, and especially on those pages where it's going to be 200 to 300 different REUs. Okay, 80–90% of those are not going to be relevant to what you want to do, but as you're going through, find who's the contact information, the faculty member you can reach out to express interest. And I recommend doing that because, you might get, it's going to be a full spectrum of responses. You can get the response where it's we're glad you're interested, but, we'll wait and see your application. And you'll get others where it's we're really glad that you're interested. We would love to set up a Zoom call and a time to talk to you a little bit more about the opportunity to see if it's a good fit. And so don't be afraid if you maybe reach out to Dr. Joseph Allen, and he's a little bit terse. That doesn't mean you wouldn't be considered for this opportunity or be a great applicant. It goes back to what I said at the beginning. All of them have different processes. But then go to these different sites, learn exactly what you need to do, learn a little bit more about the university, the program, the culture, and start making your short list. There's no target number that I would recommend that you meet for the REUs. It's so dependent on your field. I have had students that have submitted 1 or 2 REU applications and they feel really great about that. I've had students that have submitted around 10 RU applications. And I'm, if that works for you and you have the time, then by all means do that. But don't feel like you have to, like I was saying, keep scratching off more of these tickets. But anyways, the goal, hopefully, and this is going to look different for every student at the different stages that they're going to be at in their undergraduate career, is, fall semester, all of these applications are going to be due a little bit sooner than you think. But I really think it's about, finding these different options that resonate with you. So you have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, for the summer. So if one thing doesn't work out, you always have something else to look to. Now, any questions? Actually, before I get to that, also, these RUs aren't just for STEM majors. That's going to be like 90% of what they offer. But many students are at Florida State, have like, multidisciplinary interests, and that's fantastic. And so these are just a few of the fields, even all the way down to like STEM education. If that's something that you're passionate about, maybe you could find an RU that allows you to, okay, I'm going to continue my research, my project at Florida State, but what I would like to pursue through an REU, something complementary to what I'm doing here. Like, that's absolutely fine. Now, questions about REUs before we move on. But like I said before, like the REU, yeah, feel free. The REUs are kind of like that standard summer research opportunity. That's usually everyone's first go-to. And also, if you're joining us virtually, please feel free to type into the chat, and I'll try to be good about checking that in case you have questions. No, nothing so far. Okay. That must mean I'm doing a fantastic job explaining this, so I'll take that as a win. I'm not going to spend too much time on the next two opportunities, because what it really boils down to is the government will give you money. They would love for you to do research, or at no cost to yourself. And so these, and they're very, very similar. So that REU model of apply to a few different opportunities and see which ones you get, that's going to be applied to a lot of these other summer STEM opportunities. And so SULI, the Science Undergraduate Laboratory Internship, is specifically with the Department of Energy. They have 17 different labs across the US. And so if some of these opportunities and the fields that they primarily work with, engineering, mathematics, science and tech, if that aligns with what you would want to do, then this could be one of those instances, like I was saying, where it's like, well, maybe I apply to an REU or two, maybe I consider a SULI opportunity. But this is starting your sophomore year and up until your senior year, you're eligible to apply. Now, these do require 2 letters of recommendation. I didn't mention that with the REUs because it varies. Some of it can require anywhere from 1 to 3. Typically, I would say 1 is going to be more common than 3, because REUs are one of those opportunities where they like to be that point of access for students who haven't had research experience. But if you have had research experience, that's not going to disqualify you. Now, this opportunity is coming up relatively soon. Those applications are due October 4th. But if you go through their website and you find opportunities through SULI that you would like to apply for, we have our contact information at the end of this presentation. Like, please feel free to reach out to us with your availability, and we'd be happy to sit down and spend the next 3.5 weeks, wherever we're at, reviewing your application and getting you ready for this application cycle, which would benefit an REU application, later in the semester, at the beginning of the spring semester. And so the Naval Research Enterprise Internship Program, again, very similar to SULI, very similar to the REU sites. This one does have more sites, more lab placements that you could qualify for. And it's one that you can do for multiple years in a row. So if this is your first time doing it, it's a $7,500 scholarship, and the second time is a $9,000 scholarship if you return. This one you do have a little bit more time. It's due in November, but again, I'm not going to spend too much time on it because it's just like the REUs. Go in and look at these different sites and see if any of them resonate with you. Okay, Hollings, and now we're going to kind of start to get into less of these really broad, open-ended scholarships where it's like for all STEM, and start talking about a couple that have like very specific focuses. And so this is primarily for students like in the ocean and atmospheric sciences, also STEM education. But this is with the, it's for a summer internship with NOAA, the national, oh my gosh, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, if I'm getting that acronym correct. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, even if I'm wrong, just tell me I'm right. It'll make me feel better. This is, so I know a couple of you said you're sophomores, right? Second years? Okay, cool. This is one of those opportunities where you have to apply as a sophomore, and that's because it's essentially a 2-year program. So if you apply as a sophomore, and so you need to be, let me clarify, you need to be a second year out of a 4-year program or a third year out of a 5-year program. So just to clarify, this is going to give you a scholarship that you receive both during your second and third year out of a traditional 4-year trajectory. And it's a $9,500 scholarship, which is pretty dope. But the benefit with this is that you have that fully funded summer internship after your sophomore year and before your junior year with a NOAA agency. Doing the type of work that you would like to hopefully do in your career. They're going to try to place you in as relevant a project as possible. Let me admit them really quickly. And then they're also going to have additional funding for you to attend a lot of their symposiums and other poster presentation sessions to be able to network with other students in your field of study. So Hollings is going to be fantastic because it kind of plans out the next 2 years for you in terms of some scholarship funding and internship. And then you can branch out from there, find other opportunities. I know some of you are probably already involved with the Center for Undergraduate Research and Academic Engagement. Like show of hands, you're familiar. Okay, one, we'll hopefully get more soon. But there are also plenty of opportunities at Florida State, obviously to get involved in research, but to present your research. And that's another aspect of your resume in addition to like publications and recommendation letters, but showing that you've been able to talk to like your average layperson or dum-dum like myself, and you're able to communicate what you're passionate about, especially when it comes to the oceanic and atmospheric sciences. Given this current state of our world right now, it's a pretty relevant field. We should be talking to more people about it, getting more people in and invested, but I digress. So the Hollings Scholarship applications actually just opened, and so now's the perfect time to reach out to myself and my colleague Bonnie Garcia Glockner, who's not here today, but she's the one who coordinates this scholarship. She'd be happy to set up a time to meet with you. Now, if you are thinking, if one of your broad general goals at Florida State is a study abroad or an international experience, it doesn't, I know when we think about international experiences, oftentimes we just think of like a traditional, like I'm sitting in a classroom, I'm taking classes, and there are absolutely opportunities for that where you can take very compelling coursework and coursework that's not offered at Florida State, but at our study centers or some of our partners in other parts of the world. But also, there's a lot of funding out there for you to go abroad and do research. And the Dodd-Rise opportunity, which it's research internships in science and engineering. Yeah, but I wish I would have asked my partner who does speak German to give me the translation. I can't give you the acronym, but we'll do our best guessing. But anyways, 6 to 12-week program. In Germany, but German is not required. These labs operate in English. And like I was saying before, like similar with the REUs, that model where I'm going to apply to a few different labs is the same with this scholarship opportunity. But it's a maximum of 3. So they have a long list of scholarships and labs that are available. But you'll choose as many as you would like, up to 3, and then for each one of those, you're going to need to write a cover letter. Cover letters, I mean, to be blunt, kind of suck. It's like my least favorite form of writing. It's going to be a little bit different than the other opportunities that we're working with, but again, we'll go over the details of that in a one-on-one meeting. But this application is due at the end of November, so there's plenty of time for this. And I think this could be, again, a really great exercise to prepare you for like an REU application. So as I've been re-emphasizing, all of these are asking very similar iterations of the same questions. But this is one that we have sent plenty of Florida State students to in the past. So please feel free to ask us about it. Now, I wanted to include this one because so the Benjamin A. Gilman International Scholarship is an opportunity to support Pell Grant receiving students who want to pursue international experiences. And so that's always been the case. And students in years past, like as recently as last year, I had a student who received the Gilman Scholarship to conduct research in Canada at the University of Toronto, if I remember correctly. But this year they just added, so traditionally Gilman is up to $5,000, but now they've added a caveat where if you write this short additional essay, this STEM supplemental award essay, you can qualify for an additional $1,000, so for a total of $6,000. Now this one is a little bit different than an RU. So if you apply to an RU, like that is a curated experience. Like you will join this lab, they will outline pretty specifically, these are your roles and responsibilities. Now, the Gilman Scholarship, they care less what you do and they care more the impact that it is going to have. So you can find the study program or the research opportunity of your choosing. You have to do a little bit of research. In this student's case from this past year, she already had an established relationship with a few faculty members in her department and used the connections that they have at the University of Toronto to serve as that liaison for her. And so she started reaching out, basically expressed interest in like, hey, I would love to come here and work on this project. And they're, gave her the dates, gave her the roles and responsibilities, and then we were able to craft that into this application. So, the application is going to be asking you again for like those elements of your personal story and your goals. But the one thing that I need you to figure out so we can incorporate it into the essays is like, I need you to tell me what you're doing and where you're going. So if you can figure that out, there is a deadline, October 5th. Again, I know some of these are coming up very quickly, but this application is pretty approachable compared to others. Like you're not having to write a research essay. You're just needing to write about yourself, your goals, and the project that you're joining. But there is a second deadline in March. And so the way Gilman works, you apply for the scholarship, and as long as that, so for example, if you were to meet this October 5th deadline, that would be for any program that starts December 1st of this year up until Halloween of next year. So if your program starts within that window, you can apply. The March deadline is for May 1st of next year up until I think it's February 1st of 2025. And so if you can plan ahead, this is a really great scholarship for you to apply for that can be stacked with other funding. The idea grant, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, to hopefully create an opportunity that is fully funded over the summer. Amgen scholarship, again, a lot of common themes with these scholarship opportunities, but Amgen, again, for summer research, but they have domestic labs that you can qualify for. And I think on the next slide, those domestic universities are down at the bottom, but then they also have opportunities in Japan, China, and Singapore, where again, those labs will operate in English, so you do not need to know the host language. But let me go back to the last slide because I believe that had the timeline, or maybe not, maybe it's on the next one. It's on the next one. Something else that I didn't mention that I should have added to this application is for any STEM students that are any of you studying a foreign language, or at least, okay, or does anybody have an interest in studying a foreign language? It's okay if not, but there's a extensive funding out there for students to do. And so for some students, this is going to depend on your field. It's going to depend on your research. It's going to depend on the communities that you might want to work with long term. And I'm not saying you need to, just suddenly, unless you want to, study Japanese or Mandarin, but that's an option. But there are a few scholarships. One in particular is the Boren Scholarship. It's the David L. Boren Scholarship, where traditionally it's funding for up to a full year abroad to study that foreign language alongside coursework that's relevant to your major. But they have a special caveat for STEM students where they will allow you to study just for a summer semester. And so if you can identify a language, if you're already studying a language, I would encourage you to go onto their website and look at the long list of languages that qualify. But that could be another great way to, as you're thinking, maybe med school or graduate school, being able to show that you also have additional language proficiency would not hurt. So now Amgen scholars, they're going to open in November, and then it's going to be due early February. And so for a lot of these scholarships like RUs and Amgen, for those that are due in January and February, like obviously the winter holiday occurs right in the middle of that. My recommendation to you is, well, I don't want to work over winter break. I don't want you to work over winter break. So let's like talk early about the goals that you have and the opportunities you want to apply for, so we can set a timeline for when we need to start working on these. So you can shut down when I want to shut down, which is all of December. Idea grants are funded through CRE. And so this goes back to something I was saying at the very beginning. You know, we're always having a plan A, a plan B, a plan C going into the summer, is just going to help ensure that you have the funding that you need, the connections that you need to do the research, to do the projects that you want to do. The idea grants at Florida State are still competitive. But you're competing against Florida State students. We're not competing against college students from like every university in the US. So acceptance rates tend to be a little bit higher. And this is funding that you can stack on top of any other funding that you might be receiving from other opportunities granted, that may reduce slightly the overall grant that these idea grants can give you, but you're still going to be receiving some funding. Now, you can apply for group projects with this for up to $6,000, but traditionally it's up to $4,000 for a solo project. You do need faculty guidance and support for this project, and because they're not due until February, you have all of fall semester to be building those connections, connecting with your faculty, and ensuring that they would be able to guide and support you through that project. Does that make sense? Yes.
So is that like, if you don't do a summer RU, because it's a summer stipend?
I've had students that have done both REUs and have gotten a little bit of additional funding through the IDEA grant. And this is like in no diminutive way, like these are fantastic scholarship opportunities, you know, but it's something that I would apply to while also applying to REUs. And then if your REU is fully funded and you don't need the IDEA grant, so I think you said you're a sophomore. Yeah. So if we're, you know, my recommendation there, you know, might be take the REU experience, because it's full funding. It's not going to put you in a bad spot. And then you would have maybe an IDEA grant for your junior year, you know, so it gives you another opportunity to kind of cash that funding or hold it. It's no guarantee that you could receive it as a junior, but if you received it as a sophomore, odds are you're only going to continue to build your resume after an REU experience to still be a competitive applicant. And it's also important to remind that IDEA grants are not exclusively for STEM students. It's for all majors at Florida State, anyone doing research. But I hope that answers your question. Yes.
So if you apply for the grant and then receive it, but you do as hard as you said, you can save it for the next year.
You would have to reapply, so it's no guarantee. I should have clarified that. But that in the field that I work with all of these different fellowship opportunities, obviously I'm going to always encourage you to make the best decision for yourself, but I've had students that have gotten multiple offers from different programs. And then the conversation is like, you got to do what's best for you, but I would consider which opportunities are the most competitive. And if you get an offer from that there's really no guarantee that will be there the following year. There's more of a guarantee, you know, for playing the odds game, but just something to consider. Yes.
Yeah, I can kind of like, so what's an RU?
Sorry, okay. Yes, that was kind of the foundation of this presentation. But so it's the National Science Foundation Research Experience for Undergraduates, NSFREUs. They are fully funded summer research experiences at other universities in the US. And so if you Google NSFRU, is going to be the first link that pops up, but it's going to have every STEM field of study. Well, not every, but you know, you will find many, many different projects under these different, like, you know, chemistry, and then it'll have all these different subsets of chemistry. But it's a really great search engine. You can apply to multiple, you can only accept one, but it's a great way to expand your professional network and get more research experience. Cool. Any other questions so far before we go on to the last couple of, well, there's a couple more scholarships to mention, and I'll have time for more questions at the end. And so has anyone heard of the Goldwater Scholarship? Hopefully you have, because Florida State has been very successful over the last, well, 4 years especially, but we've had many students that have received this scholarship. And so now all of the other opportunities that we've been talking about are fellowships in a traditional sense, meaning, yeah, they're mostly fully funded, if not fully funded, mostly funded, but you are going and doing, like going to a new university, you're going abroad, you're doing research, there's some like tangible learning outcome from that experience. Whereas The Goldwater Scholarship is more of a traditional scholarship. Like, it will recognize the research and the work that you've been doing, how you've performed academically on campus. But it is more of a, congratulations, you are outstanding, here's your scholarship. Keep doing good work. So Goldwater's prerogative is they want to support STEM students, specifically students in their sophomore and junior year. I think it's very similar to the Hollings in that you need to be a second year out of a traditional 4-year program or a like third year out of a traditional 5-year pro. So that window changes, but a traditional sophomore or junior who wants to pursue a career in research, STEM research, you know. And so, I mean, if you had asked, like, you know, 19-year-old Jesse what he wanted to do, like, I would have no freaking clue, you know. And so I understand, like, that's a very difficult question to answer. And so my advice to sophomores who, you know, are very much at the forefront of their academic career is like, we are not being disingenuous in this application, but we are making the best educated guess with the information that we have, you know. And so if it is like most likely that I want to pursue an academic career, or I want to pursue a PhD in physics, and then I want to go on to work in blah, 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 that, okay, great. If that's like, hopefully the 60% most true response that I have, then that's what we're going to go with. And if life happens and things change, and well, maybe it's actually going to be a PhD in chemistry, like, Goldwater is not going to care. They just want to see that you have some understanding of the direction that you're headed in. And so if you apply and receive this as a sophomore, it's a $7,500 scholarship that you get as a junior and then as a senior. If you apply to this as a junior and receive it, you get that your senior year. Does that make sense? Now, this is also the only scholarship in this presentation that we're talking about that has an FSU endorsement process. So you can go apply to 10 REUs and never talk to me again. I would be slightly upset, but I would understand. You can do that. Now, the Goldwater, you have to come and talk to me, because part of the process is you submit a pre-application, which just opened. And so if you would like to look into that. And what the pre-application is a little bit of background information about yourself, and then you need to list the names and email addresses of your 3 recommenders, and you need to give a brief description of your relationship with that individual. So this is my my PI, or this is my Orgo professor who has, you know, I've taken multiple classes with, blah blah blah, whatever. And then you need to submit that for me to approve to give you access to the application. Now, please email me. Like, you can submit that at any time, but email me ahead of time if this is something that you'd be interested in applying for, because like everything else in this Goldwater application, it all needs to point towards, I want to pursue a career in research. It's the same when it comes to those recommendation letters. Like, I don't want one of those letters to be from like, this is from my Pee-wee football coach, you know, who has seen me grow and mature. And while that would be an excellent character reference, it is not relevant for a Goldwater scholarship. Unless that football coach is also like a leading national physicist. Like, I don't know, maybe they are, but you know, who knows? So recommendation letters from your PIs, from faculty, for people in your field are going to be most valuable. So anyways, something that is important to mention, because we have had students that have received the Goldwater Scholarship that have this career trajectory, so it is important to mention. But if you are wanting to pursue a career in medicine, that is fantastic. You are only eligible for this scholarship if you plan to pursue an MD PhD, so a joint program, because I want to, you know, be a practicing clinician, and I want to also be, you know, conducting cancer research, you know, on the side. I don't know. Like I said, this was not my field, you know, but anyways, but there was actually just announced a new partnership with UWorld. And so they have already been selecting these MD PhD applicants, but now additional funding was set aside for there to be 6 specific scholars that want to pursue this goal. So if that is you, would love to talk to you more. Already described the duration of the award, and 500 is a general estimate. This is a nationally competitive scholarship. 500 are awarded nationally, anywhere from like 12 to 1,300 if I'm ballparking applicants on a given year. But Florida State has had 8 in the last 4 years. So it's not a big number, but it's a pretty compelling number, partly because every university, from your Florida States to your Harvards to everyone in between, can nominate 4 students. And so this goes back to why you need to contact me, is because we have a faculty committee with representatives from mathematics, from engineering, from chemistry, from physics, that review our pool of applicants, and they can endorse 4, 5 if there's a transfer student, and 6 if there's a student veteran in that group. And so the last 4 years, unfortunately, we haven't had a transfer student apply, and they just added this additional caveat for a student veteran. But we would love to talk to you. We would love to help you understand what the scholarship is looking for and how to craft it. One of the major cruxes of the application is going to be that research essay. It's a 3-page research essay. Now, you need to qualify for Goldwater, either be at the forefront of a project that you are about to start. You could be currently in the midst of a research project, or it can be a research project you have already completed. You could talk about any of those, as long as you can provide detail for what the project was, what your roles and responsibilities were, and what the future direction of that project is, and any preliminary results if you have them. That research essay is supplemented by a few personal statements that delve into: how did you become interested in this field? What are your academic goals during your time at Florida State? And what are your graduate degree goals? Hint, hint, Goldwater wants to see that you plan to pursue a PhD, or that ND PhD. And then other short essays where you're able to speak to your character, your experiences in your field, and other aspects that just help the committee better understand who you are as a person, not just as a student. And so, like I said, this application just opened, and we do have an internal deadline of November 15th. That is for a full and complete application. I know that's coming up in 2 months, but if this is something that we get started on now, it is more than feasible that we can meet that deadline. That is so our committee can meet what is probably going to be December 6th to review the applicants, choose who is endorsed, and then get those decisions out before winter break. Because like I said already, I want you to take a break, and I want me to take a break over winter break. And then when we come back, we have all of January to make any final edits as suggested by the committee, and just to polish up your application. I know that's a lot, and I know I've probably been talking for longer than I should. That's usually the case. And so, these are things that we can break down in a one-on-one meeting, but the benefit to applying to this, obviously, besides the funding, besides the experience, besides the professional development, is that you're hopefully, by working with our office, developing these chops that you're going to need as a junior and as a senior, as you're applying to maybe other lab experiences or applying to graduate school, especially, and I don't know if any of you attended, I know this past Saturday, some faculty at Florida State hosted a workshop for the NSF GRFP. So it's the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, which is essentially full funding for your graduate degree. But that application, without boring you with the details, is a two-page proposed research paper, and then a 3-page personal statement that delves into both your academic qualifications and the broader impacts of the research that you could do, of the goals that you have. And to have enough information to really be able to write that application, it involves that you get involved, or it requires that you get involved outside of the classroom, in the lab, with some fellowship opportunities, with your faculty, in your community. And that's what we, the Office of National Fellowships, want to help connect you to. And again, that's kind of a summary of what I just said here, is to really just prepare you for life after Florida State. Now, this is our contact information. Again, my name is Jesse. Feel free to email any one of us. We all have different roles and responsibilities, but we all kind of work together. Like I mentioned earlier, like Bonnie is your go-to contact person if you want to apply for the Hollings Scholarship. If you want to apply to Goldwater, please reach out to me. But we, obviously work with all students. And our social media, don't follow us on Twitter. We really don't use that anymore, or X, or whatever the hell it is now. I don't know. But if you follow us on Instagram, we will post about all of these workshops that we have coming up. We have student writing or peer writing workshops. When we have student alumni of Goldwater and Fulbright and many of these other programs. I didn't really talk about Fulbright, but we will post about all of those events and also do student highlights. So we would love to hear from you, and the same for the people who are joining us virtually. If you have any questions, please feel free to type it into the chat. Otherwise, you're free to go. Thank you so much for joining. Please grab more snacks. Thank you. Thank you.
So you mentioned like for the Goldwater one, it's 3 letters of recommendation.
Correct.
So obviously like one would come from my PI, but
Yeah.
I don't like where would like the other 2 typically come from?
So it's a good question about Goldwater recommendation letters. A letter from your PI is expected, like you said. If that's not there, that looks odd. And it is inherently a little bit more difficult for sophomores to apply for Goldwater than juniors, because you literally have one less year to do this type of work. But Goldwater committees understand that, and they review it to a different degree. Now, if you say you have this letter from your PI, I would recommend reaching out to some of your other faculty. Maybe those who have taught courses, maybe you've taken multiple courses with one professor who's can speak to your performance. If you're having trouble like thinking of someone else, then like I think that's a really great reason to like be intentional about your sophomore year and going to office hours, building these connections, maybe applying to an REU, to build these relationships and then come back and apply as a junior. Because a lot of students sophomore year, like we've had multiple sophomores receive it over the past few years. But it's the letters of recommendation that often like students will have excellent research experience, 4.0 GPA, like everything you could ask for, but you need those letters. So start with your faculty, anyone who can speak to your research capability, and then we can talk about secondary letters, another time. But I will say, this is by no means a requirement, but it is absolutely noticed by review committees if you have a letter of recommendation outside of Florida State. And so students, let me give you a good example for this, and you can apply this to your specific field, but for that student a couple of years ago who was pursuing the MD PhD, those students are held to a slightly different standard because you both need to prove that I want a career in research, but then I'm also capable of getting into medical school and pursuing a career in medicine. So 2 of their recommendation letters were like research faculty that they had worked with. And I believe the 3rd letter was from a medical doctor that they had shadowed with or knew quite well. And so everyone's field is going to be a little bit different. So I hope that answers your question. Let me check the chat really quick, because I thought I saw somebody type in there. Okay, Udall, that was okay. Okay, you actually me at 9 a.m. this morning was like, damn, I need to add Udall to this presentation. And guess what I did not do? And so the Udall Scholarship is a fantastic opportunity if you are interested in like conservation efforts or the environment or any research or projects like centered within that realm. It's also for students who are interested in tribal healthcare or tribal policy. And so you need to, for 2 of the 3 qualifications for Udall, you need to either identify with a tribe or an indigenous group in the United States, or anyone is welcome to apply for the 3rd caveat, which focuses on environmental science. So you can apply as a sophomore and I believe as a junior as well, if I remember correctly. And Udall is traditionally a scholarship. And so if you receive it, you get your funding. And then there is a summer workshop, like kind of conference experience with all the Udall scholars that I believe is held in Arizona. I can't remember the exact city, but they will pay for your flight out there. That's another excellent opportunity that we have sent many students to it in the past. So thank you for pointing that out. I am sorry that I did not include it in the presentation, but that is another one that Bonnie directs. And so please feel free to reach out to her and she would love to talk to you more about it. So that was the quick and dirty on Udall, but yes.
If you get one of these like research scholarships, could you apply it as credit hours towards your degree?
Usually. Usually these are credit bearing experiences, but I think sometimes you have the option of whether you want it to count or not. And so if you want it to count, then by all means, talk to your academic advisor and they'd be able to get you like the deets about that. Yes.
For the programs about studying like a language abroad, do we need to have studied that language at FSU or?
Not necessarily. For some of the language scholarships, it really depends on the language, but these scholarships exist because they understand that if you're not studying like Spanish, French, or the Russian, Arabic, Mandarin, all those languages are important, but there are a lot more resources and funding devoted to that. If you're studying other languages, they understand that access is really hard. So they want to be that point of access for you, very similar to the RU experiences. Now, some, meaning like your Russian, your Arabic, your Mandarin, Japanese, and a few others, they do expect that you arrive with a certain level of proficiency for the critical language scholarship. The boring scholarship is like, we don't care where your proficiency is at as long as you have a good program that's going to support you. And so if you're interested in language study, I'd be happy to talk to you more about it. Yes, to clarify for UDAL, it is also similar to the Goldwater scholarship in that you need to be endorsed by your university. So it's not one that you can apply to on your own, but if you reach out to me or Bonnie, we'll be able to walk you through that nomination process. Absolutely. Other questions? Yes.
Can we email you if we're just trying to get involved in regular research?
Oh, yes. Yeah, these are all excellent opportunities. And like I said, the REUs are that great point of access. But if you're like, I'm just trying to figure everything out here at FSU, I'd be happy to talk to you about that. I would start with the Center for Undergraduate Research and Academic Engagement. They have, and so if anyone in here is currently a first-year student or anyone virtual, you can apply for the Undergraduate Research Opportunity Program. I think that's one of the best ways to get involved in research. Or we can sit down and look at some faculty who are doing work in your field and walk through how to get in contact with them. But yes, start at FSU is my recommendation, and then we can branch out through all of these other opportunities. Yes.
For scheduling meetings, we just like email you and then set up a date.
Yeah, I believe Bonnie and I both have limited availability through EAB. And so you can go online and schedule an appointment, but the reason it's limited is because we're not just meeting with students, we're also reviewing and editing essays. And so for all of these application processes, I should probably been a little bit more specific. We help you apply, we review your materials and make sure that everything is as compelling and thorough as possible. But if you email us with, hey, these are the days and times I'm usually available, Bonnie and I have way more availability than what is reflected on EAB. Well, not way more. We have a little bit more availability, and so we'll be able to adjust to your schedule. So yeah, just send us an email with your availability and we'll get back to you. Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining. Like I said, grab more snacks on the way out, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.